Anita Lewis, Phoenix, good to see you. Karen Dorsey, good to see you from Gastonia. Rob from Locust Grove. Rehaset from Toronto. Rhonda out of Manhattan. Shamida out of Philadelphia. Good to see everybody. Okay, so in case you're wondering where we are on approximately page 138 in Powernomics, and so that section jumps into things like the Black brain drain and some other critical issues that we kind of need to address as a people. And what I'm going to do is start reading from this, and then Dr. Anderson will join us when he's ready. But for right now, I'm going to start reading so we can kind of set the tone for some of this, and I'll just take a pause when Dr. Anderson comes in. So if you get a copy, if you don't have a copy of the book Powernomics, you should get one. The website is powernomics.com, and that's where you can get all of Dr. Anderson's books. You can get all of them for $99. They have a what is referred to as a I want to say the classroom pack or the something like that. He'll tell you when he comes in. But anyway, you can get all of his books at one time, and also I've been encouraging you guys, if you have it like that, if you have extra resources, to just buy some extra copies and give those copies away. That's what me and my wife do, and I think it's fine for you to not just be the student, but I encourage you to be the teacher. How you doing, Dr. Anderson?
Oh, I'm gonna be real black on you today.
Uh-oh, not too black. You're gonna get us in trouble.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing I'm just gonna use a little bit of. I'm gonna see if I can relearn how to walk like black folk with a limp. So,
okay, all right.
The cool blacks walk with a limp. You know, I don't know. I didn't hump the shoulders, and I don't know how to do that. But I'm gonna learn how to do it all over again.
All right, Dr. Claud Anderson, limping and pimping. All right. Well, I'm glad to see you, buddy.
Well, I'm glad to see you too. You're always one of my most favorite people in the world.
Oh, vice versa.
I thoroughly enjoy coming on your program, as I say, because for health reasons, for about the last 8 or 9 years, I've avoided making very many public appearances, because for health reasons. But you're about one of the few exceptions that and about one or two other people that are in the business of broadcasting, but you sort of lead the crowd. You're the one of the most academically oriented and the best creative broadcaster that I'm aware of. You're extremely knowledgeable of the technology. You use it effectively and persuade our people and to enhance what their learnings are. And so I'm indebted to you for doing that for our people. And that's why I enjoy coming on.
Well, without you, there is no me. So I'm everything you said, I shoot that right back to you tenfold. So I'm gonna always pass that ball back to you. I don't deserve any credit, but I'm just doing my best. And so what I'd like to do is, if it's okay with you, I wanted to read some of the book, and then I'll just stop, and then you can give your interpretation in terms of what you meant when you wrote this in Powernomics, if that's okay with you.
Anything with you, con mucho gusto para tu todos el mundo.
All right, amen to that. Everybody put amen in the chat. All right, so.
For you, anything in the world, okay? That's what I said to you.
Well, vice versa, sir, vice versa. All right, so, and by the way, everybody watching on Instagram, if you hit the link in my bio, you can join into the Zoom, but I'll stay live on Instagram for a few minutes. And so this is the book club that we do every week. And for the last couple of years, actually, we've been going through all of Dr. Anderson's books word for word. For those of you that didn't want to take, didn't necessarily, maybe reading isn't your favorite thing, and it's okay. But we're going to get you through this because we believe in the Black Business School that Black people should be educating our own children, creating our own jobs, and supporting Black-owned businesses. We have to have our own businesses, create our own jobs, and also create our own educational system. So this is just a contribution to the educational system. I'm qualified to teach, so I teach as much as I can because I want you guys to have access to whatever information you need. And that's why we do this every Wednesday. So you can join us every Wednesday night at 8:30. So I'm gonna read from page 138 in Powernomics. You can get your copies of the books at powernomics.com. This section is, you're talking about economic action steps in the book, Dr. Anderson, and you wrote, it is the fourth economic action step. You said we have to counter the brain drain. with businesses that aggressively attract Black talent from schools, government, and corporate America. And I think the brain drain question is a big one, because lately we've had conversations about how much progress are we making when our best and brightest and most talented go work for white institutions, white businesses, white universities, et cetera. What happens to Black institutions, Black universities, Black businesses, et cetera? And so you're saying here that there's a brain drain. So I'm gonna read some of this to you. You said that if the mind is a terrible thing to waste, then Black America must stop the brain drain of its best and most talented people out of our Black communities. For centuries, Black parents have worked hard and dreamed of sending their children off to get a good education so they could eventually get a good job in a white home, business, or community. Black parents have been no different from white parents who also worked and dreamed of sending their children off to get a good education so they could get a good job. The greatest difference between the parents is the way they perceive their children will put that good education to use. Whites encourage their children to look within their own communities for business solutions and opportunities. It is almost inconceivable to think of a Jew, Asian, or Hispanic telling the children that to get a good education, then find a job in a Black-owned business. That's deep. Ain't that deep, y'all? Let me keep reading. Black people do not tell their children that either. It is very difficult to find whites, Asians, Jews, or Hispanics who have ever worked for Blacks. These groups wisely teach their children to use their training and skills to take care of their own group first. Dr. Anderson, I'm gonna pause right there and let you elaborate on that if you'd like.
Well, thank you. You asked, the initial question is, are we making any progress in that regard? I'm not really sure. I don't think we are. I think we started downhill immediately after the Depression in the 1930s, when Black folk made their greatest advance in connecting the dots between having a Black community and having Black businesses and Black employment opportunities. And it's been downhill ever since. In 1920, when the Blacks, and this is an amazing point, in 1920, when Black folk had only been out of slavery for a very short time. And do you know about 1920 that at that time, Black people had in their own little communities or neighborhoods rather than communities, that they had at that time 20 times more Black businesses than they got today. Now think about that fact for a second. 20 to 30 years out of slavery, when they had never been involved in businesses and employing their own people. In that short period of time, those Blacks who were fresh out of slavery learned the importance of owning their own bed, having their own communities, learn the importance of having that Black ownership instead of just Black employment. Because they not tell Black folk, oh, well, we got to find some jobs for our people. You had jobs. When you were slaves, you had 98% of all the Blacks in America were fully employed as slaves. The problem was they weren't getting paid anything. So the issue wasn't employment. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't give a care if all the jobs disappeared, as you can just make sure the Black folks got the wealth. See, if you got wealth, you don't need a job. A job is for those who are poor and they got no options. And I want Black folks to have options, so get the money. Forget about a job. Because see, well, Dr. Anderson, I'm with the Biden administration. We got to create jobs for Black folk. Hell, you don't tell other groups that. You said, you try to create wealth for all the other groups, but for Black folk, you don't create jobs. Black folk got a wealth disparity that came out of slavery, where Black folk right now don't own and control more than 1/2 of 1% of anything of value in this country. That is exactly where they were in 1863, at the end of the Civil War. They had, at that point, that all the Blacks in America, except a few thousand that were quasi-free, they had a few little jobs, but that was it. But at least they had ownership. And but now everybody wants to find a job for Black folk, except one person I have to have a lot of respect for and appreciate his attitude. Well, see, I love he has a good attitude, and that's Boyce Watkins. See, he's telling up front, you don't need a job. If you got the money, what do you need with a job? You want to hire some other sucker to come do the work. That's what you want. You don't need to be going, I'm looking for, you don't, that's like voting. Same thing with voting. Wealth tells you you don't have to have a job if you got wealth. You don't have to vote if you got wealth. I guarantee you, of all my years and experience in all levels of government with presidents and governors and chairmen of governors for economic development and everything else, and over education, I have never, ever seen a major election coming up where I've gone through a neighborhood that I was very familiar with and seen extremely wealthy whites lined up to go to vote. They say, what am I voting for? I got all the money and resources. What I need to vote for? I'm gonna go vote against myself. And all those times I went in different places, either with about 6 or 7 juries, and down in Miami, grand juries, or when I went into Venezuela, Colombia, and other places around the world. You never see it, or even Latin America, with the La Ruscas and the Latin mafia. They don't vote. Most of the people I knew that were in those organizations, even the young boys incorporated that control most of the illegal drugs in tri-states like Michigan, Detroit, and not Detroit, Michigan, and Indiana and Ohio. They said, "Well, we're going to vote for them. We control we're Young Boys Incorporated. We're organized, so we control all the drugs and all the big money passing through those states." And they say, "Well, no. The thing is that you have to be organized and use your talents and skills in any way you can to build first what's in your neighborhood and what you need. And you start off by converting that neighborhood to a community. And remember, we do not have not one community, Dr. Watkins, not one community that meets the definition of a community in the entire United States. Not even one. Not one out of 47 million Black folk. You haven't got one darn community. They always talk, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. You can't do anything without a community. And in that community, that's where you store your wealth, your power, your energy, your health, your heritage, your employment, your production, and your everything of value is stored along with your income and wealth in your community. Now, if you don't have a community, where are Black folks storing everything? Where are they storing it? They only have 1/2 of 1%. And that's exactly what they had. And as a matter of fact, when Blacks came out of slavery in 1863, guess what? At that time, do you know, at that time, I went back and did some analysis on that. At that time, approximately 3 or 4 white men in America had more wealth than all 46 million Black people put together. Now, see, I don't know if you've absorbed these figures. Just think about them a second. Where I can come out, this is at slavery, coming out of slavery, where Blacks have been enslaved for all those 350 years. And the total wealth that Black folk have, because they were still suffering the success of slavery, where slavery's primary purpose was to maldistribute 100% of everything into the hands of the dominant white society. Slavery put all the money, the wealth, the businesses, the income, the materials, the resources, the power, politics, the power, privileges, and rights into the dominant white society. So how are you competing if you don't have any of that? What are your children going to school for? What are they going? You tell me, well, right now they can't go to school because white folk, they don't want no critical racism in school. I said, that means don't be learning about what Dr. Anderson is telling you about, that we are still in a race-based society, and they just want you to keep your mouth shut and your brain shut so that you stay locked in box like you were all the way back to 1863. You have moved one iota. As a matter of fact, even Black women that run over and join the white women, talking about us too. Where for every dollar a white woman got to run a household, guess what? A Black woman have less than 2 cents to run a household against a white woman. Why are you only joining them? You own and control nothing. I'll stop right there because I'm saying, basically, we are not progressing. We need all the talent to work together to for one purpose only, to redistribute the things that was put in place to effectuate a slavery underclass in America. And that's the only thing which we're focusing on. No civil rights. Civil rights ain't worth a darn quarter. Civil rights started out originally, but only for Black folk. And after the turn of the century, after 1800s, out of 1900s, here's every Black leader in America saying, I'm for civil rights. Civil rights was set up strictly and solely for Black people. Now everybody's got it but Black folk. Everybody now going to the major universities, they said, we don't want to talk about race anymore. I'm an Asian. I'm a Pacific Islander. I'm a Hispanic. We don't want to talk about all that stuff about what happened to you Black folk. Let's pretend everything is fine now, that everything has been resolved and we're all together as one. And even though we stole everything last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and Sunday from you, now it's a new week. Let's pretend, and we got everything. Let's pretend that we all are happy now. We don't have to resolve anything anymore. And that's what they're talking about now. That's why Obama didn't do one iota of anything for Black folk. And he's got his partner in the White House right now, Biden, doing the same damn thing. We're gonna get Black folks some jobs. Don't get Black folks no damn jobs. Get them the damn money so they can create and own businesses. And he put out trillions of dollars, and I haven't mentioned Black folks' name one time. He's putting the money into immigrants, give them money and jobs and opportunities. I mean, this is a sad country. And that's why I said I'm gonna be so Black today. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Let me show you something. This is a chart of Black wealth versus white wealth over time from the Brookings Institute. And the top line in the green is white wealth. The gray is all households, and down at the bottom is Black wealth. And if you notice, this goes back to 1989, last 30 years. And does anybody see any change that has occurred in the last 30 years? I mean, look at this. Black folks were at the bottom 30 years ago. We're still at the very bottom now. Also, if you notice, in these little peak areas where white household wealth went up around 2007, 2008, when the stock market took off, notice that Black wealth did not really move. That and some of this is obviously due to the structure of the economy, but a lot of it is due to the way we approach things, the way we approach things politically. We approach it in the wrong way. Like Dr. Anderson said, we asking for jobs, not the wealth. Well, you're getting the sucker's payday at that point, and you're going to look like a sucker. And this chart says it all. Also, instead of investing and putting money in the stock market when the market was going down, you have Black folks that were running away from the stock market. That's where all the wealth was. So ultimately, this chart, I think, Dr. Anderson, really exemplifies a lot of what you're saying here. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think you're right on, and I think the research that was done by the institution was right on too. The only thing you asked, it has anything of significance change. I have to point out one thing, and I bet you can't guess what that is. That was a major change on your chart. Put your chart back up there again.
Let me pull it up here real quick. And actually, while you talk about that, I got to call my daughter right back because she's calling me. I think she might need a ride from dance class. So let me take care of my child, and I'll let you take over the conversation, Dr. Anderson. Go ahead.
Okay. The major change in that is that as you're looking at, you go back at the top of the line, it was white, where whites own and control everything since slavery started way back in 1789. And the whole purpose of slavery. And I can't figure out why no Black leaders nowadays ever focus on that they locked in everything back in 1789. They put it into the Constitution and said that this is basically a white nation, and whites gonna own and control everything of value. And they put that down there, and that went on, starting that line where it says 150 and go up and peaks and goes down, and it goes back up again at the end. And right underneath that comes all households, and which doesn't mean very much because we don't know what that is. Is that including rich people, poor people? Is that including legal and illegal? Is that including the mobsters and gangsters? But now, what's the difference on here is that way up there where you got that 200, what Dr. Price should have been putting the 200 mark, that should have been, it should have been non-Hispanic whites up there, and also Asians. Up when you get up to that 250 mark, That's the leading group is at that 250 mark, and that is Asians. Asians only started coming into the country in around the 1970s, and late. They were the latest ones coming in, and immediately they jumped in, starting in about 1975, and started measuring their wealth. They jumped all the way up over the whites. And the leading income groups in America now are Asians. And right underneath Asians, you'll see, before you get to that 200 line, you should put in whites, Hispanics that pass as whites. And they're in there too. So Asians and Hispanics that are passing as whites are above those other ones, just pure outright whites that came from European ancestry. Then you go down to down the line to just in general with any income period, and all the way down to where blacks at the bottom. Blacks have not moved, not one iota, and they only move when the entire economy moves. And guess what? It doesn't make any difference whether it's good times or bad times. It doesn't have any major impact on Black folk. If it's a good times in the market, it doesn't mean anything for Black folk. Black folk aren't appreciating them, taking advantage of it. They can't, because they haven't got the income structure, and they don't have the culture that says, let no money pass beyond our hands if we can help it, and attract every dollar, every penny you can into your own communities and slam the door so it can't get out. But and charting using the chart that Dr. Watson put up there, the only bit difference where I was just disagreeing friendly with him is that above that Asians are off that chart. They're way up over that. Asians got the highest median family income in the United States. And
they don't vote. The Asians don't really vote that much. That's right. An interesting thing too that people should know. Go ahead, Dr. Anderson, my apologies.
Yeah, see, and they are concerned about voting. And another part of their culture is they are instructed, do not involve yourself in anything pertaining to Black folk. And see, and to put it into concrete, one of the first things the Asians did, and now they're twisting it around, saying Asians built the railroads. Asians ain't built no damn railroads. They came in this country only looking for, coming from the Far East for a very specific reason. After slavery, that's when the Asians came to America. They came here after slavery had ended, and then they because they were expecting to be allowed to go look for gold, and the Asians were pouring in this country looking for gold. That's why in California now with all the flooding, see, half of them might learn how to float on platoons and go right back over to Japan and China. But that's what they came for. They didn't come here to look for jobs. They didn't need jobs. They came here looking for wealth, gold, and at that time, and oil. And they came into the United States, and a lot of them got jobs, but they got paid for their jobs. There was employment jobs. They got paid. Blacks are still working with those while the Asians came in and were getting paid to work on the railroads. Black slaves were still post-slavery. They didn't pay blacks anything of any substance to work on the railroads. And so I just feel sorry for our people. They don't check these things, and now the Asians are going up to one of your old schools, Harvard, saying we got to get rid of any applications talking about race. We don't scratch off all the clauses talking about race, because racism doesn't exist at Howard. At Harvard anymore. We don't have any racism at that and all these other big white universities. Racism doesn't exist. And so don't get no preferences. Don't give out any racial preferences. But they got racial preferences, and this is my concluding remark. Because as soon as they got here in the 1860s, guess what? In the 1870s, you know what they did, Dr. Watkins?
What's that?
They went and filed lawsuits. As soon as the Asians came into the country looking for wealth by having access to the gold fields and the oil fields, so for wealth, first thing they did, they rushed to the United States Supreme Court while they still had immigration process and clothing on, rushed right to and filed for what? They filed for for laws that says that blacks should not be mixed with Asians under any circumstances. Did you know that? Called the Yoke and Wick decisions. They got two Yoke and Wick decisions of the United States Supreme Court saying the Asians.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why I'm telling you this. Most non-blacks don't know that. Saying under no circumstances can you put Asian children with black children in schools. And now they're over at Harvard and all these expensive school universities now saying we want blacks kicked out, no racial preferences. And these blacks haven't said a mumbling word, not one word, Dr. Watkins. Have you heard the NAACP say anything? Have you heard the Congressional Black Caucus say anything? What in the hell are these people doing? All of them are asleep. They need to, everybody is good and it's beneficial. It's too damn dead flies.
So now do y'all understand why we gotta do our own history classes, why we gotta educate ourselves? I hope y'all understand why, why it's important that we do this ourselves, because they're not gonna teach you this in school. They're not gonna teach you everything that they teach you in school is gonna be focused on controlling you. Integration was a effort to control you. And Dr. Anderson, what you just said made me think about another thing I saw somebody bring up recently was they showed where Biden was sending a lot of the Haitian refugees and Black refugees back to their country. At the same time, they were putting out billions of dollars to bring Ukrainians into the country. They're setting them up, houses, money, everything else. And this made me think about something that you talked about in your book, Black Labor, White Wealth, which I hope everybody has a copy. If you don't have a copy, you should have 10 of them in your house to give away to the children. But in your book, I remember you showed the immigration laws and how they had a scale where the darker you got, the fewer that they would allow into the country. And when you got to the white British, it was, an unlimited number of immigrants originally. And then when you got down to the African countries, it was all the way down to zero. We don't want no Africans. And that was all the way until about the 1960s or 70s. Can you kind of talk about that in terms of just the racism behind even the immigration policies in the US?
Well, the immigration policies were always firmly fixed going all the way back to 1790. In 1790, the first law passed by the United States Congress. Did you know what the first law was? It was called an immigration law. That was the first law they passed. And the immigration law says, this is a white nation, and the only people that can be accepted unlimited invitation is whites, period. And that was the immigration law. You couldn't come in. And they set up that criteria by differentiating later on between the Europeans, and they broke that down to Eastern Europeans and Western Europeans. Then the last ones were Southern Europeans. Southern Europeans had darker complexion. You got down around Spain and those right around the Mediterranean Sea. They had a little darker complexion, but it went up from going from the English and the British. And that's why blacks always talk, we got a girl now married to royal family. What in the hell are you talking about? I don't, Lord, Lord, take me away. I can't, I don't, you know what? They have enslaved 18 million blacks. 18 million blacks and they have never worked for over 400 years and never worked a day in their lives. And talking about I'm married into the British family. Lord, I can't figure out. Is that earned ignorance or is this imposed ignorance? The black folks said, bring me a truckload of that real ignorance. I want to try some of that stuff. And they just loaded, smothered us and got a paint cloth, just paint them. I'm gonna paint you with some real, true black ignorance. I said, Lord, I don't understand it. So now they're talking about, so the law started in 1790 with the first law. Now, at that time, it was supposed to be an all-white nation. But as whites began, more and more white Europeans started coming because people like Benjamin Franklin and George Mason and Thomas Jefferson, they were going over to Europe, not to borrow money for themselves, to buy up land and wealth in the United States. And see, those so-called founding fathers were the first founding crooks. And then they go to school. So when you send your kid to school to learn about white society, they don't tell you that the founding fathers were the first crooks. And what they did, they borrowed money from different banks all over Europe, just borrowed money from them. and said, I'll pay you back with a certain amount of interest after we bring in some more people and start getting money for it. And so then we're going to lend some money for the Revolutionary War if it ever starts, and they're going to owe us a whole bunch of money for lending that to them. And so so the founding fathers came over strictly to be the rich class. Then underneath that, after they said, now we got, and the rest of these immigrants coming over here, they're going to be management class people. So all those Europeans that have come to this country since the first initial founding people, they were in a management class. They came here and they were freeloaders. The word that Black folk never used, they should have been using it for the last 200 years, is freeloaders. Freeloaders are people who go from one country to the next to get unearned benefits. So you're being an economist, you understand the difference between earned benefits and unearned. Well, all the European immigrants to this country, all of them, their parents and their great-grandparents came here to get free benefits. And what they came for was because George Washington and all these founding fathers were telling everybody, come to America and we would give you all the land you want free. Starting out initially, when you touch the ground, you get 650 free acres. And for every slave you get, and when you get here, you get another 150 acres for every slave you own on top of that. And so, and those white Europeans that came here, the same ones now you saw climbing up the Capitol building and doing it on January 6th. Why they were coming, you know, they were saying, we come here to take back our country. And they call themselves the patriots and the proud people, and the Southern plantation owners. We have taken back our land. And the reason talking about taking back their land was because what had happened was that after the war, all that land that those so-called plantation owners owned in the South, that land was supposed to have gone to Black people. They supposed to have gotten all that land. You weren't supposed to give all that acreage back to those Southern rednecks. That land was by that time, the Congress had approved that all the land that had been taken and during the Civil War would go to Black folk. And then they got into Congress, they started debating and said, no, let's give it back to them. And the stuff that was set aside for Black folk to get free clothing, free food, free clothing, and get the land, and more than 40 acres, all that land should have gone to them in the state of the United States. All that land that had been taken in the war was supposed to go on to Black folk, and all that land that was on the coastline running from Virginia all the way down to Florida. And like the Vermilion Island, all the island land, all the land that had water coming between it and the coastal states was supposed to have gone to Black folk. Hilton Head, all those things, Simon Island, Amelia Island, I can go on and on. All that land is supposed to go on to Black people.
And
then,
so we basically were just robbed out of a lot of our birthright, and we don't even know it. We just assume that God wanted us to be poor.
Yeah,
and a lot of us forget that.
Yeah, and see, and that's what the what they call the radical Republicans raised Cain about in the Civil War. They says our primary purpose of passing what we call a new constitution. What's the purpose of a new constitution? It's for reconstruction. Now you go find me one Black person, one white person who can tell you what reconstruction means. If I told you go build an outhouse out here, and you went out there and messed around for 2 years and then build a damn thing and it fell down, I said, look, let's go back. You got to reconstruct that thing and make where it works. And see, the Constitution had messed over Black folk. And that's why the radical Republican says, go out there now and do reconstruction. And that means rewrite the Constitution. And so what we're going to do, we're going to come up with a whole bunch of things. The first is going to be the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and then we're going to put in about 8 other laws to help Black folk get some wealth and restore things back into the hands of Black folk. That's what Reconstruction was supposed to mean. And it's supposed to go on from 1865, and it's supposed to go on until we got it corrected. But guess what? It only lasted 10 years. And the white folks then, the rednecks came back in and took it over and turned around and took all the stuff that should have gone to Blacks and gave it to whites. Gave all the land back to them in the South. And rather, they should have been hung by law for having tried to overcome this country. Every Southerner was supposed to have been hung from a tree and executed and because he was for sedition, but he was going to trying to take over the country. That's what in the Civil War, and then they were properly charged for death. But rather than killing them, Johnson came in and replaced Lincoln and says, let's not kill them. Let's take the stuff we're going to give to black folk and give it back to them in the South. That's how those boys up on January 6th, climbing the buildings, and we're taking back this country under Trump, and we're going to follow Trump and take back the country. This is our country. No, it wasn't yours. It was blacks that built the country. I can't even find any blacks who even talk about history like you do. You're the only one talks about history and the importance of knowing what's going on around you and the laws. Pardon me for over talking you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. This is your show and your space. I'm just here to support, and because they know, these y'all have been here before. Y'all hear a lot of what I think, and I really want you to hear from Dr. Anderson, because I think that this is the kind of stuff that we really should have got in school. And my prayer for the next generation is that kids won't have to go searching outside of their normal system to find this kind of information. This has to be standardized and normalized. We can't get this kind of stuff in a public school, and really they should be teaching this kind of stuff because it would give too much power to black folks. So it's up to you. If you are a parent, if you have a child that is in your space of influence, then you are the one who should be introducing those ideas to your children anyway. And so, by the way, everybody, you can get Dr. Anderson's books at powernomics.com. That's powernomics.com. Also, don't forget that on Friday, we're doing the financial slumber party. We're going to have some fun. We want you to get into your pajamas, show up at 11 o'clock at night on Friday the 13th. And I will make you the best investor in your family. I'm going to do a lecture that I put together called Stock Market Decoded. And I'm going to spend 2 hours explaining exactly how it works, where the money's at. And the best thing is you buy one ticket, it's your whole family can come for free. So just one for you. You can bring your sister, your cousin, your daddy, whoever you want to bring. So just go to my website, boycewatkins.com. If you'd like to join us, we're going to do it Friday the 13th. My wife will be there too. And it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, so I'm going to read a little more, Dr. Anderson.
Boyce, let me conclude one point. What I just forgot about is that when the Civil War ended, the radical Republicans says that we're going to build a new constitution. That was it, and this constitution is include those things that were omitted in the first constitution, and we're going to have a second constitution. That's what the Reconstruction was about, doing a second constitution, and it's going to be focusing on blacks now. And that's going to be, and the whole point of it is to reverse the Dred Scott decision of 1857, which says a black man has no rights that a white person is bound to respect. That's what, and we're going to call it civil rights. And that's where that word civil rights came from. It's going to be civil rights, and for Reconstruction, for everything that black folks should be getting. And again, we're going to start off with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And then we're going to include about 6 or 7 other ones, and they did that. But it says that the basis of the civil rights law is to reconstruct so that all those things that white folk took from blacks will be returned to them. That would have been reparations for black folk. And see how you're going to go right now. Talk about you're going to have a reparations movement. You don't understand that you had a reparations movement and you let whites take it from you. They took that and converted it to something they can use. And so that's why they put out six new laws. One is called the Highway Act. Highway Act, which says that after 13, 14, and 15 Amendment, they had the Highway Act says you cannot be going around just killing blacks because you find them on the street and kill them on the highways. That's what it's called, a Highway Act. And it says and it's illegal, and that's a death penalty for being caught killing a black person. And they passed 5 laws like that. And guess what? Here comes the Congress, the United States Supreme Court saying, well, you can't give black folk anything, they haven't earned it, and therefore they're not deserving anything. So those laws that you made for black folk laws, but we didn't put them officially into the Constitution, so we're going to declare them illegal. So all those laws that were passed in addition to the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment that were for black folk have never been revealed because black folk don't go out and search the Constitution and say all those things we should have gotten for reparation. Where are they now? Why are blacks out there chasing them down? What's the Congressional Black Caucus doing? That's what they should have been telling you about. And reconstruct means reconstruct. And they came back and started doing the same damn thing they did during those slavery years, 360 years. And now this year is 465 years. They've been screwing over black folk, and black folk having the vaguest idea what they're getting screwed over. They're getting AIDS and getting the hemorrhoids and all that from it, but they don't know what they're getting the screws about. Okay.
Okay, all right. So that's a funny analogy. Okay, Dr. Anderson, so I'm gonna read a little bit more from your book.
Okay.
We're on Powernomics, page 138, and I'm gonna read to the end of this section, and then I'd love to get your take on it. So we're talking about economic action step number 4, which is countering the brain drain in Black communities. So you say here that since approximately 90 to 95% of all whites and Asians work for their own people within their own communities, Black people become the exception. Only 2% of all working Black Americans work for their own people within their own communities. There is no direct line between a professionally trained Black person and benefits to the Black community. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? That there's no, all this so-called progress with all these educated Negroes is not even coming back to the Black community. It's like they're going out hunting for food and they're throwing the food into the garbage and their family's still starving to death. That is a good one, Dr. Anderson. So you said here, the new industries and communities we build must be places that provide employment and ownership incentives for Blacks who want to use their skills and expertise toward the Powernomics vision for the race. Our churches, schools, and organizations must join in the effort to instill value for creating employment and wealth building opportunities within our own communities, or end or reverse the brain drain. Black organizations can help reduce the brain drain by fostering and promoting public policy incentives and practices that encourage and provide financial and tax incentives specifically to inner city Black companies that employ Blacks. I'm gonna read another paragraph, Dr. Anderson, then I'm gonna pass the ball back to you. 50 years ago, nearly 98% of all employed Blacks worked in white homes, businesses, and communities. The story of Black domestic workers illustrates how Blacks have always used their intellectual resources for others. There is a parallel in business. Domestics arrived before sunup to start fires and warm the homes of white families so they'd wake up and dress in comfort. Blacks then cooked breakfast, sent the kids off to school, washed, scrubbed, ironed, sewed, and cooked dinner for the white families. After feeding the white family, cleaning up the kitchen, and putting the children to bed, these Black mothers would then return to their homes after dark. Did anyone ever wonder in all those years, who was taking care of the Black children? Who fed and watched Black children while Black mothers were taking care of white children? I would like to know who's taking care of the Black community and Black businesses today when nearly 98% of all employed Blacks continue to work outside their communities in white businesses or offices. To achieve the Powernomics vision, Black businesses need Black talent, and so does the entire race. I'm gonna drop the pin on that. Dr. Anderson, I ain't got a microphone to drop, but I do got one actually, so let me drop that too. Dr. Anderson, please go ahead. Tell me that wasn't powerful, y'all. Go ahead, please, Dr. Anderson.
Yeah, and see, and that's part of the problem right there. But see, we got nobody taking care of the Black community. And when the civil rights groups got off track, and they started off track in 1964, because when Johnson says, I got to do something for Black folk in this country, and I'm gonna pass a thing called model cities. Remember that? And model cities we're gonna pick all these big urban cities and go in there and do something for Black folk. And as soon as Nixon got in there in '68, what he said was, well, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's just take the focus off of Black folk and put it on minorities, women, children, and gays. And so it was called the what was it? The senator's name? He sent a note to Nixon, suggesting that they take the focus off of Black folk, and that would stop all the riots in the cities, because the riots had broken out then in the late 1960s, and he was just saying we could shut Black folk down by ignoring them. It was called benign neglect. Benign neglect, pretend that Black folk don't exist by putting all your attention, all your money, all your resources where it was initially being put in 1790 on whites only, or those who can pass for whites. And so that model city money out of possibly $6 billion going into a chest for Black folk, guess what? The money was spread all over the country. And 68% of all the jobs that came out of the model cities went to whites in the suburbs as administrators, and Blacks got nothing out of it. The same thing that happened in the 1930s with President Roosevelt when he started his program. And Black folk were shut out of it. Didn't get anything out of it. And so, to make a long story short, never in the history of this nation, going all the way back to 1790, has there been one politician, Black, white, yellow, with polka dot stripes running up and down his butt, has never went out in the street and says, I'm getting elected to a public office because I'm going to recognize those things that Black folk were shut out of. I'm going to have programs that are specifically designed to address their needs. I'm not going to be doing what the original Constitution and the law in 1790 did, place all the emphasis on immigrants and shift it all to immigrants and women. That's what they did. So women in 1964 went down to Congress and says, if you're going to write a new law for immigration, don't put it on Blacks, put it on women. That was in 1964. So when Congress passed that law in 1965, a year later, the emphasis went to women. And as a matter of fact, they included in there what's called Title IX. Title IX, which says give to women. Anything that, if you got a choice between giving it to Black folk, give it to women and put it into sports so that women can be in more visible and participatory in sports. That's what happened. And that Title IX money, I checked 67 counties in Florida when I was an all education in the state. And I checked every county, and guess what? Had the superintendents sending me how they're going to spend the money that should have gone to Black folk in that time. This was in the 1970s. Guess what? Every county in Florida said we're going to give the money to women for sports. And it was put forth as a joke by a Black congressman from Virginia initially and a Black senator from Louisiana. And they said, we're going to just change this direction of all these resources so it won't go to Black folk. And we're going to call it Title IX. And guess what? The Blacks in Congress didn't see a damn thing. They sat there, and half the damn congressmen, white congressmen that I knew, they thought it was a damn joke. They were laughing. They said, man, what kind of leadership do you have in your race that we just said that you all worked hard to get all this money? And at the last moment, white women came in and told the congressman, went over to the Congress and got on the congressman and switched it so that everything would go to women instead of them. That's where Title IX came from. They said, you guys get nothing because you have no leadership.
Well, you know what, Dr. Anderson, that's interesting you talk about Title IX because, me and my wife spent some time at universities, and she's still on the faculty at the university, and I left Syracuse, but I remember Title IX, and I remember noticing that a lot of the money, the sports revenue at a lot of these schools comes in from Black male-dominated sports like basketball and football, and then because of Title IX, they then take that money and they spread it out to things like women's field hockey, women's volleyball, stuff like that. And so that's another way that the billions of dollars get taken out of the Black community because our athletes are $1 trillion commodity. And the other interesting thing about Title IX is I knew a Black man who was a very hardworking, distinguished professor at a university that I know of nearby. And he was the only Black man on the entire campus. They did not hire Black people. They discriminate, to this day, they discriminate against Black people. And he was the only Black man that had a job there. And he was accused by a white woman, a white student in his class, of engaging in inappropriate behavior. Now, they went to him and they said, we have an accusation against you that you're under investigation for. He said, okay, well, what is the accusation? They said, well, because of Title IX, we can't tell you. He said, okay, well, who is my accuser? I'd like to know more about it. They said, because of Title IX, we can't tell you. So this black man, I kid you not, and I went to his university. He wanted me. He was so triggered and traumatized by it because he spent 25 years building his career up, and his whole reputation was being destroyed because of this weird accusation. So they called in this big fancy law firm from Chicago to come in and do this investigation with him. And he asked me to sit in on some sessions just so he could keep us cool, and I did. And so here's what happened. So a whole year goes by where he doesn't know what he's being accused of, who's accusing him or anything. After a year goes by, I kid you not, he finds out that the accusation came from a white girl that was in his class that he does not even remember her. He never had a conversation with her in private that he ever recalls. In class, he made a joke where he has baby showers for his students when they have kids. And I think he was joking with one of the pregnant women. He said something like, so when does the baby hatch? He said something like that. And this white woman said that this joke traumatized her, and she literally leveled this whole accusation against him. And we still think that she was just upset because maybe he gave her a bad grade or whatever, but she was clearly using those Title IX rules to really destroy his reputation. I mean, he's, to this day, it's years later, he's still traumatized from all that. And this is just one story I saw that happened to a friend of mine. This happens all over the country. So when you talk about Title IX, I got a whole lot to say about that. And you are right. In addition to the financial drain, it kind of puts white women at the front of the bus. And that's kind of what it's like. We had our rights that we were fighting for. And then it's almost like white women kind of jump to the front of the line. The Me Too movement starts with black women, then white women jump to the front of the line. Civil rights movement starts with us, white women jump to the front of the line. And I don't know about y'all, but I get kind of sick of that. Dr. Anderson, what do you think about that?
Well, see, and you're right. And see, and that's part of the problem in this country that you just admitted to, having been involved in. Nobody understands or is educated to and prepared to deal with what we're engaged in. They never understood that slavery, committing slavery against black folk, committing slavery against any group, that is a declaration of war. You understand what I'm saying to you? To say I'm coming into a country and enslave your population, that is a declaration of war. No blacks have ever made that issue. Then you start talking about what reparation comes naturally, just like it in Germany, and reparations for the Germans after World War II, or in the Point Four program, in the Marshall Plan in Germany, but in Point Four in Japan, where they, after the war, they gave them all kinds of money. Black folk don't use anything and understand how to fight for any damn thing. I'm sick and tired of them never understanding anything, and that's why right now, when the civil rights began for black folk, they took all the money and set up about 16 banks in America and put all that money in those banks. And that included all the salaries for all the black soldiers who had fought in the Civil War. They put all their income in banks across America. And guess what happened? They put administrators, white administrators, over those damn banks, and they had one in every bank in every major cities. Whites went in there as administrators and stole every damn penny and used that money for their personal interests and needs and use it. It came to $38 million initially. They took that and used it and built it. You have to use that and multiply it in time to figure out what the value that would be today. They did the same thing down in Haiti, but now that Biden is talking about doing something for Haitian. Why they do that something before they took all the money out of the banks in Haiti in the early 1900s? It stripped where blacks had money because they have gold and oil in that damn place. And they could have gotten a water. Huh? Okay. And then they took all the money out of all the banks down in Haiti and put it in the civil the bank in New York. And they put $58 billion out of blacks' pocket and put it in a bank in New York to hold it, to keep them after they sent the Marines in there in the first of the stop in the discord when they took all the money out. And blacks have never raised Cain about that reparation or the civil or the black banks that they closed down and took all the money out of. I can go on and on and on. And you're talking about getting reparation because it sounds fancy. I started raising issues about reparations way back in 1970 when nobody was talking about reparations. And now all I want to have reparations meetings. Reparations, what are you talking about? You don't even know what you're looking at. You don't know what you're talking about. And slavery was a declaration of war. You were naturally entitled to it under the War Declaration Act.
Well, you know what? Well, you know, Dr. Anderson, I'll tell you what, there's so much to work through, so much to talk about, you know, and I guess, you know, I laugh about it because there's so much work that has to be done. And I think that maybe as a conclusion on this, and you know, on page 139, I know that that Mrs. Anderson's in the background and she doesn't want me to keep you for too long. And I'm glad you joined us. But, you know, I'm gonna tell you the thing that really stuck out to me the most was when I was reading the analogy you made between the Black mother that goes into the city or goes and works for white folks all day long and neglects her own children or has to neglect her own children. And this the same way that is the same thing that we do to our own communities when it comes to Black professionals, that we go serve everybody else, feed everybody else, take care of everybody else. And then nobody ever says, well, what happens to Black people? What happens to Black children? What happens to Black institutions? What happens to Black-owned businesses? If we're shopping with everybody else, then what does a Black-owned business get? They get boycotted by whites and boycotted by Blacks. If we're working for everybody else, what does the Black institution get? You know, and because white folks don't come work for Black businesses and Black folks don't go work for Black businesses. So it's, I think it circles back to, you know, and I know a lot of people felt some kind of way about it one way or the other. You offended a lot of people, as I did, when we were talking about Deion Sanders going and leaving Jackson State to go to the University of Colorado. And I really wanted to make that point out there because nobody makes points like that. Everyone applauds when we leave behind the Black community, you know, and that's very disturbing that you applaud your own failure. You applaud the destruction of your own institutions, and then you wonder why your institutions end up destroyed. So I want to bring everybody's attention back to that chart I showed earlier, where they show Black wealth, white wealth, and family wealth. And then also you can put Asians in there too. And Black people were at the bottom 30 years ago. We're at the bottom now. We have not closed that gap at all. The gap has actually gotten wider. And any intelligent person should ask themselves, why is that gap getting wider? If you've made all this progress, if your so-called leaders are telling you you've made all this progress, then that gap should not be widening. That gap should be closing. And the part of the reason I would argue that that this gap is widening is because you're listening to the wrong people. You're listening to these Negroes on TV telling you, you know, they're voting for the Democrats or the Republicans is going to save you. You listen to these people that are applauding every time a talented Black man, a talented Black woman goes and gets a job serving a white person. You know, you're clapping every time you go out and you spend money with white folks. The rappers will go spend money with white businesses and white jewelers, and you get on Instagram and cheer that on. Well, you're cheering on the things that are hurting you, you know, and so ultimately, I think it's going to take a lot of work to almost re-educate ourselves, Dr. Anderson. I'm gonna pass the ball back to you, let you kind of give the final thought on this, but it seems like there's a lot of work to do in terms of us really sort of unlearning everything that we did learn and learning something that's going to make us better. And then also, if you talk about the next generation, how do you think we should educate the next generation of kids?
We should educate them so they understand the major difference between getting a job and getting wealth. Our major problem in society is a wealth gap and a lack of wealth. It's power. Wealth is the biggest power we got on this earth. It's money power. And we have less than one half of one. Take that one and cut it in half. That's all the wealth we've got. And white folks right now got 97%. As a matter of fact, the average white child, when he's born, and on that time in any hospital in the United States, he'll get about 86% of everything he needs to be successful the day he's born in a hospital. And we put in that same hospital, you can have a Black child born the same time in that hospital. And guess what? He gets nothing. But see, that Black child just got born in a hospital. He inherits everything out of that 97% that's been maldistributed. Is locked into the white society, and every child that's born can get it because he got it in stocks, bonds, trust accounts, and everything else. It goes to him. Black kids have no trust accounts and no He doesn't inherit anything except what blacks have been focusing on for the last 60 or 70 years. And that's stuff like social integration and gay rights, or well, we got rights for everybody, for equality and equal opportunity. They don't get anything because everything they talk about is non-inheritable. You can inherit equality. You cannot inherit food stamps and welfare. You cannot inherit a job, and you have no wealth for them to receive. So consequently, the white kid will outdo him every time, because the white kid doesn't even have to leave his community. He can get anything he wants any day. Just walk down the street to any store and get a job. A black kid can walk down the street in a black neighborhood and see nothing but garbage dumps, rundown buildings, weeds growing as high as he is, from fence and burn down damn stores and buildings. He inherits nothing because black folk don't focus on the right issues. They're focusing on social issues rather than on issues such as getting wealth. And you can't get wealth by working a job. The only way you can get rich working a job, Dr. Watson, remember this for your students. The only way you can get rich working a job is if your butt is good at stealing. Okay.
The only way you can get rich working a job is if you are good at stealing. That's funny. Well, you know what, Dr. Anderson, I think you've done a great job tonight, and I appreciate your time so much. And everybody, I hope you can give a digital thank you to Dr. Anderson for coming out here. He does not have to do this. He does this for you. And I hope that we can also thank Dr. Anderson by really, really, really supporting the Powernomics Corporation. If you go to powernomics.com, you can get all of Dr. Anderson's books. And again, if you already bought the books, buy some more. If you got extra money, I think you can just give them away. And remember, the thing is that I want everybody in here. Our numbers are not big compared to the masses. We are not. We're like the Navy SEALs, in my opinion, like in this part of our community, Dr. Anderson, because if you think about the Navy SEALs, one Navy SEAL might be equal to 10 or 20 regular soldiers. So, because you are the ones who actually understand what our community needs, you're the ones who are getting it done with your families and with your children. I don't want you to just be a student. I really want you to be a teacher. You have what it takes to be a teacher. That means that, if you got some extra money, buy 20 or 30 of these books and put them in your house and just give them away to kids in the neighborhood, give them away as Christmas presents. And to be known in your neighborhood as that Powernomics lady or that Powernomics guy, that pro-bliggity black guy, it's okay. I'm the crazy black guy in my space, and everybody that's around me feels the influence of what I'm doing. Y'all see some of it online. Believe me, imagine what it's like being right here in my house. You ain't gonna be in my house or come in my house without knowing what me and my wife are all about. And I really want you all to consider that, have that impact. You got it, So one good way to do it maybe is to buy some extra copies of the books. Just give them out, let people know what you represent, what you believe in. And that's also a good way for us to thank Dr. Anderson, because the celebrities ain't going to do it. They do a lot of talking. The celebrities will call Dr. Anderson and tell him how great Powernomics is. But very few of them, except for Ice Cube. Ice Cube was the only guy that I asked him to write a check with me, and I said, I don't want your money. I'll match you dollar for dollar. And Ice Cube wrote a check. I talked to Kanye West about the same thing. Kanye West was in another planet. That's why we don't talk anymore. But I can say to you guys that Ice Cube wrote a check. I wrote a check, and we bought a lot of books from Dr. Anderson. And I would like for you all to consider doing what you can to support. Okay. Anyway, also don't forget that on the 13th, we are doing the financial slumber party in the Black Business School. Friday the 13th, we're meeting at 11 p.m. Wear your pajamas, bring your popcorn, and I'm going to go through something called Stock Market Decoded, and I'm going to literally spend an hour and a half making you the best investor in your family. If you buy one ticket for yourself, you can share it with your relatives. So it's buy one, get one free, buy one, get three free. If that's what you want, that's fine. So feel free to join us. You can go to boycewatkins.com and get access to that. Just go to my website, boycewatkins.com. So thank you again, Dr. Anderson. I didn't know if you had anything else to say before we head out.
Well, just thank you. And I hope that the remarks I make on your show really disturb Blacks well enough to make them get out and start doing something, motivating them, and tell them to get those books and make sure they read them, and make sure that every Black school has those books in them in the United States, and tell them don't listen to the book committees in these every states that decide what books can go into the school and what can't. And most of just white books can go into the schools. which will keep Black folk down and constipated intellectually. Okay.
All right.
So take care, buddy.
All right, you too, my friend. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. Have a good night, everybody. See y'all next week.
Oh,
All right, bye-bye.
give me a call. Give me a call over the weekend. I need to talk to you. Okay.
I sure will. I sure will.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Talk to you soon. All right,
And
bye-bye.
tell all your listeners, and I love them. I enjoy having fun with them. Okay.
Well,
And
they can still hear you, so you can tell them yourself.
okay. Okay. So
All right, everybody. Have a good night. See you later,
all
Dr.
right.
Anderson.